All right, well, welcome. Welcome to our MFin Application Tips webinar. My name is Diane Jordan. I am one of the Associate Directors in Admissions. We want to extend a warm welcome to all of you joining us today. I can see that based on the registrations, we have an incredible group from around the world. No surprises here as MIT draws its strength from not only the US, but international communities, and of course attracts a highly dynamic group of prospective students. So we have lots of information and tips to share with you. I am joined by my admissions colleagues, Alexis Marcus and Lindsay Cope, who are also excited to be joining us and bring extensive knowledge about the application and admissions process. So we know that many of you have engaged with our community. In fact, a number of you have started your applications already, so good for you. Although we will be giving an overview of the curriculum, today's focus is really on the 2021 application and admissions process. Our standard is that you apply in the year that you plan to enroll. So keep in mind everything that we are talking about today applies to the 2021 enrollment year. Also, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions in advance. They were great. We've made every effort to incorporate your questions into our presentation today, but we may have missed some. So I ask that you please submit questions, and you can do this throughout the presentation through the Q&A function only. Both Lindsay and Alexis and myself at different points during today's presentation will get to your questions. We're really grateful if you can also position questions that'll be good for everyone. And then we'll also leave some time at the end of the presentation to answer some of the questions that came in through the Q&A for everyone and answer those live for you. So that's basically what we'd like to do. So let me get started and go right into a little bit of an overview of the program. This is, again, the agenda. We're going to do an overview. I'll talk a little bit about the class profile. We'll go into the admissions criteria, what we are looking for, really break that down for you in terms of the key categories and areas that we're going to be focused on from an admissions standpoint. The application process, all the application requirements, some tips around that, important dates that hopefully you already know about, but we'll also make sure that you, reaffirm those and reconfirm them with you. And then, as I mentioned, we'll go into a Q&A. So a little bit of history. When we launched the Master of Finance program, it was in the midst of a huge global financial crisis. And hopefully everyone can appreciate that the challenges of that time in history. There were massive layoffs. Many of our deans, in fact, throughout MIT, kind of were not understanding why the Sloan School of Management was interested in that particular year and time in launching a Master of Finance program. And, our finance faculty really believed that the world did not need fewer finance professionals, but better trained finance professionals. And no better place than MIT to provide that. We felt by launching the program, we were in a way giving back to society and really addressing the mission of MIT Sloan in educating future finance leaders and putting them out in the world to do great things. The program is an 18-month program. You do have the opportunity when you apply to indicate whether you're interested in a 12-month fast track. It is a deep dive into quantitative finance skills. That being said, we also want to ensure that students are getting a good grounding and foundation in fundamental, modern finance, which was invented at MIT. We'll take that claim and stand behind it. So you're really going to learn about, the history of markets, financial markets, how they operate, and it's a really great foundation in addition to the deeper technical skills that we're going to provide you. And there is a flexible curriculum in the sense that while there are core requirements, you have lots of opportunities to take advantage of courses not only at MIT Sloan, but cross-register at Harvard's professional schools, the law school, the Kennedy School, the business school, as well as to take courses throughout MIT. Action learning is something that was created also when MIT was founded back in 1861, believe it or not. It was really a concept that we believe that the learning should be also applied practically speaking. So a lot around experiential learning. And one of the ways that we do that for MFin students in particular is they take advantage of the finance lab. So that's something that you can certainly read more about, and we have a lot of information on the action learning on our website. And then, of course, it goes without saying that we provide extensive career resources. And in addition, if you choose to want to focus even further on particular areas of finance, we offer concentrations. It's optional. You can only do one, but those are in capital markets, corporate finance, or financial engineering. And many of our students do take advantage of that. This just sort of lays out the timeline in terms of your experience in the program. Of course, as hopefully everyone here knows that the program typically starts on July 1st. You have a full summer term, foundations of modern finance, some of the fundamentals around financial mathematics and accounting. And then you continue on through the fall term. And by the way, that summer term is a requirement. So it's not something that, it really is an important part of your experience. And then going into the fall term, some additional required courses. January is typically what we call an independent activities period, where students don't take classes during that entire month of January. And so that is when you can take advantage of the finance lab or other action learning opportunities. Then students will come back for the spring. Analytics of finance is the hallmark of, and really capstone, if you will, of the finance program. And then if you're in the accelerated 12-month, you will actually graduate that May. For the students who are in the 18-month, which is the majority of the students, you come back after, you will do a summer internship. Our career resources are available to help you navigate the tools that you need in order to secure that summer internship. It's really, again, another great way to apply practical experience. And then students return after the summer for a second fall term and complete their degree requirements. Some students choose to do a master's degree, master's thesis rather. It's not required, but certainly something that you can do. Some of our students, a small percentage, are actually interested in continuing and applying to a PhD program. So that the thesis is going to be an important aspect, as well as doing some additional courses and electives. I put this slide up because I think it helps to, again, give you a better focus on all the different activities and offerings that the MIT finance ecosystem has to offer. You know, whether that's through your connections with students and graduates, our alumni, the faculty are really generous with their time and want to get involved with students. There are some research opportunities with faculty, as well as potentially TA-ships. The academic programs, you're part of a larger portfolio of programs at MIT Sloan, so you get to interact with students from lots of different backgrounds and experiences. We have industry partnerships that our students can really take advantage of, especially as it relates to the action learning and finance lab. Innovation, the research, MIT is, after all, a research institute. So this is certainly something that is fluid, and particularly when it relates to finance. If we think about some of the more emerging aspects of finance, whether we're talking about fintech or cryptocurrencies, or we're even just talking about, you know, the fundamentals of finance and how they've changed. So labs we have for finance, we have the Lab for Financial Engineering, and we also have the Golub Center for Finance and Policy. Again, these are great ways to explore the finance ecosystem at MIT, and we do have students who take advantage of trying to secure some research work with faculty who are involved with those centers and labs. Forums, events, alumni network. So again, this is part of a very large and powerful ecosystem that when you come to MIT and enroll in our program, will be a part of it. And I mentioned I would talk about the class profile. So this is a snapshot. This is something that's also available on our website, as is much of the information we're going to be presenting to you today. And as you can see, the MFin program is an early experience or pre-experience program. We had a little bit larger class this year, 132, but we anticipate we're actually going to be closer to 120 for the 2021 cycle. Because it is in pre-experienced, students come, majority, more than 75% are coming directly from university. So they've had maybe some internships in a finance related field or other field because it's more quantitative. But the majority of those, as I said, are coming with very little full-time work experience. The remaining percentage of students have anywhere between 1 to 3 years of experience. And as you can see, in terms of the undergraduate majors, it's really across many disciplines, as you might expect, the STEM disciplines, as well as econ and business, some engineering, computer science, humanities, and law. Again, this is a snapshot. It just gives you a sense of the students who have been successful in enrolling in the program. So let's talk about what we are looking for. Obviously we are looking for smart, motivated applicants who are passionate about finance. Why would you enroll or apply to a master's in finance program if you weren't interested in doing a deep dive? And we see this as a great way to really launch your careers. There are some three areas that fundamentally we're going to be looking at. It is MIT and it is an advanced degree. So there is an expectation that we're going to stretch you intellectually and academically. And that means we're going to be looking at your prior academic record, fundamental mathematics. How many, if any of those courses have you had? How well have you done in those courses? Computer programming. How familiar are you with R or Python? We highly recommend it. While it's not a prerequisite, it is definitely something that we will be looking very closely at throughout the admissions process. And then even for the students who are admitted, we will be, expecting them to be able to pass a programming literacy assessment once they arrive. So it's not required, but again, highly encouraged. The STEM disciplines, many of our students, as you might expect, are coming from those. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then if you've had some coursework in finance, statistics, accounting, and econ is also very valuable. But we're looking, we take a very comprehensive approach to the admissions evaluation process. And so again, keep in mind that it's not one particular aspect of this, and we're not laser focused on one particular metric. So it's really a combination of all of these factors. The next area that's going to be really valuable is your industry knowledge. So again, goes back to why do you want a Master in Finance program? What do you hope to accomplish? What do you know about the potential roles? We don't expect you to tell us exactly where you want to land necessarily, although if you know that, that's great, but at least to be able to explain and understand what it takes to be in a particular function in finance, whether you want to be in a more quantitative role or in a more traditional iBanking role, buy side, sell side, what do you know about the industry and about particular functions and roles? And have you had any of that work or internship experience that's related? So passion for the field and motivated to make an impact, again, speaks to the mission of MIT. Excellent communication and interpersonal skills, again, goes without saying, outstanding written and spoken English language proficiency. We want to know, how you've contributed and been part of a team, and desire to be an active member of the MIT Sloan classroom and community. And this is an essential part of your time. So while you're coming primarily for the academics, we also have an expectation that you are going to engage at a pretty high level with the MIT, the larger MIT Sloan, and perhaps MIT community as a whole. And that could be being active in student clubs, other activities, competitions, conferences, maybe even, becoming an officer in the Sloan Senate. So these are all together the things that we're going to be looking for as a whole. And again, as I said, it's very comprehensive. So I covered a lot. I'm actually going to turn it over to Alexis, who's going to speak to the actual application components, what's required of you, and give you break down each of those components specifically in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Diane. So I know that there's a lot of questions coming in on the application components too, so I'm going to try to cover some of those as we go through these different slides here. So right here, you can see that we have a checklist. So as many of you probably know, the deadline for the MFin application is coming up, and it's January 5th of 2021. So a little bit more than a month and a couple days here away. And all the components are listed out here for you. So there's the resume, there's 3 short answer questions, 3 recommendation letters, your academic transcripts, test scores, and 2 video questions. I'm going to go into each of them a little bit. The one thing I do want to point out is that interviews will be by invitation only, and they will all be virtual. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So for the next thing that I want to talk about is the resume. So the resume is a 1-page resume. So please make sure that you're following the formatting instructions. So all of these instructions that are on the slides can be found both on our website as well as in the instructions in the application itself. So it's a 1-page resume, Times New Roman font, size 10, and we would like it in Word or PDF formats and uploaded into your application materials. You should redact out all of your personal information from your resume. So that's your name, your contact information. The reason we ask you to redact it is so that when we're meeting as an admissions committee, from time to time, we like to calibrate and discuss different applicants. And so we just want to make sure that all of your contact information and your personal information is removed so that we can review it as a group. When you're putting together your resume, you will want to do it in reverse chronological order. So we do want to see education first, followed by work experience, and then additional information. So that additional information could be extracurriculars, community service, any skills or certificates that you have taken, but you really do want to make sure that it's limited to that 1 page and follows the formatting that we ask for. So the next thing that I want to talk about are the short answer questions. So as I mentioned, there are 3 short answer questions in the application, and you are limited to responding in 200 words or less to each question. So you'll want to think about how you want to respond and effectively communicate that in the application. The first question is asking you about academic and professional experiences and any accomplishments. Specifically, we're looking for anything that you think would help you succeed in the Master in Finance program. So what have your accomplishments been in finance, math, statistics, computer science? Anything applicable that falls within that realm can be included in this answer to the short answer question. Question 2 asks you to describe both your short-term and long-term goals. And how is the MFin program going to help you achieve those goals? So again, you're limited to 200 words, which we know can sometimes be a challenge, but if you think about it ahead of time and put some thought into it, you'll be able to effectively tell us what the plan is for after graduation from MFin and where you see yourself down the line. The final short answer question that we ask you is for you to share some personal qualities that will enable you to contribute to the advancement of our mission. And so you'll see the mission is bolded at the top here. It will also be, again, on the application. So this is something that I would definitely recommend, you think about before you submit the application. Give it some serious thought and give us a great answer as to what you're going to bring to the class. That's probably one of my favorite short answer questions to kind of see, how do you view yourself as setting yourself apart from your, fellow applicants. So the next thing I want to talk about are letters of recommendation. This is very important. So there's 3 letters of recommendation, and depending on where you are, either in school or in your career, I would like to ask you to pay very close attention to where we're asking these letters to come from. So for everyone, one of your letters must come from someone who can speak to your quantitative abilities. So that can be, anyone that you choose. You need to think wisely about who you'd ask to do that. However, if you're a current student, we ask that you submit your last 2, the additional 2 letters from your current school. If you're working full-time, however, 1 letter should come from your most recent employer, and the other one could come from a past professor, or again, someone else from your professional setting. So when you're thinking about who to ask letters of recommendation from, you want to think about how long they have known you. In what capacity do they know you? Are they able to speak favorably to your abilities? Can they say why that you stand out from other students or workers that they have worked with? You want someone that can be able to give specific examples to the admissions committee about your academic or technical abilities. So you want to think very carefully about who you're asking to write these letters of recommendation. Additionally, make sure that you give them ample time. So as I mentioned, the application is due on January 5th, and that includes your letters of recommendation. So you should be asking those recommenders as soon as possible to get those letters submitted by that January 5th deadline. In order to submit their letters of recommendation, you will need to go into the application on our system and include their contact information. From there, they will receive a link and they can upload their materials directly into your application. We do not take letters of recommendation that have been emailed to us, and please certainly do not mail any to the office as we are remote right now. And so make sure that they have that ample time. There's always someone there to help if they're having any technical difficulties uploading those letters of recommendation. So the next thing I want to talk about are academic transcripts. I know I saw a couple things in the chat about how are we viewing pass-fail grades in light of COVID. Of course, we understand this, and do not worry. MIT went to pass-fail for some of their undergrad courses, so we are 100% on board with reviewing transcripts given the light of the world right now. So please do not worry if that has been your undergraduate school. You will need to upload all of your transcripts from any post-secondary institutes that you have attended. We can't accept digitally signed transcripts. So for whatever reason you're getting an error message, just make sure that you've printed out your transcript and you can re-upload it. We do not need an official transcript at the time that you apply, but we will need that before matriculation. So the transcript is pretty straightforward. The one thing I will note is that if your transcript is not in English, you will need to get it translated. We will accept translations from institutions or professional training services. You cannot translate it yourself though. So please make sure that if it's not in English, that you're uploading both the both the transcript as well as the translation of the transcript. So the next thing to talk about here that I know has come up a lot are test scores. So for the 2021 application only. So if you are applying in a future year, this does not apply. This is only for 2021. We are reviewing applications without standardized test scores. I will say that if you have a standardized test score, so GMAT, GRE, EA, TOEFL, IELTS, anything of that nature, whether it's expired or whether you have an active test score, please do include it in your application. The test scores are an important component for us to consider throughout the application review process, but we understand that the access to these exams has been a challenge for people in certain parts of the world. And so for that reason, we have decided to review applications without them. You can submit other pieces of evidence this year, to support your abilities with, including expired test scores, as I said. If you have any MicroMasters courses, any non-degree coursework certificates, think about, what certificates that you are going to be submitting and whether or not it really does help to support your application before uploading it. What is it adding? Is it adding value to your application? That's what you should be asking yourself. So again, if you have the test scores, please absolutely upload them. But if you don't, for the 2021 application, we will review your application without, and there's absolutely no negative inference if you have or have not taken a test. Okay. So my favorite part of the application, videos. There are 2 videos as part of the MFin application. The first video is something that you can prepare ahead of time. It's a 60-second single take video where we're asking you to introduce yourself to your future classmates. So in this video, I want you to think about, again, what that prompt is. We are looking for you to tell your future classmates who you are, introduce yourself. So while the admissions committee is only reviewing the application, or excuse me, reviewing the video, and it's actually not being shown to your classmates, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you would tell your future classmates in a few months from now if you are part of that MFin class. It's really exciting for us to get to know you in that capacity because we are reviewing your application materials, your resume, and your short answer questions to answer a lot of our other questions. So we want to know kind of a little bit more in a different capacity. With all of the videos, video 1 and video 2, again, it's a single take and you should be speaking directly to the camera. In addition, we do not want any subtitles and no background music. Those are the 2 things that please, follow those instructions carefully so that, we can accurately hear you and can listen to your words carefully. Video 2, this is not something that you're going to prepare in advance. Once you're in your application and you submit, you kind of go to the next phase of the application, there's a 60-second video response that you're going to upload immediately. So what happens is a question pops up on the screen and it's just a general interest question. Absolutely no preparation is needed for this. It's a really open-ended, straightforward question. So I promise you there's nothing technical. And it's something that you'll just be chatting with us and telling directly to the camera and responding to it. So no preparation needed, and it's a randomly generated question, so everyone's going to get something a little bit different. When you are uploading these videos, just, especially for video 1, make sure you review it. Take some time to think about whether or not that's the right take for you, or if you want to do it again. You do have that ability to upload and take your time on that video. So video 2 is something that is going to happen right away once you're recording the video. So the final piece of the application is the interview. And so after you submit your applications on January 5th, they then go to our admissions committee for review. All of the applications that we receive will be reviewed, and then shortly thereafter, we will send out invitations to interview. This just indicates that you've gotten to a next step in our application process. It by no means guarantees admission. It is just that next higher level in the application process. So again, interviews are by invitation only. They will all be conducted virtually this year as we cannot travel. And we will, you'll get an invitation and there'll be links to sign up, and more information will come out during those, during the interview invitation phase. All of the applications, as I mentioned, are reviewed in full. It's a holistic review. So again, we're looking at everything, whether you have test scores or you don't have test scores. There's no negative inference. I know there's a lot of questions about that. And then you may be invited to interview. You will interview with one person from our admissions committee, and then thereafter, once we finish up interviews, final decisions will come out. So the important dates for you to remember are January 5th for your application deadline. And then interviews are going to be happening sometime in late January, early February 2021. And then final decisions will be released March 11th of 2021. Anyone that is offered a seat in our MFin class for 2021 will need to reply and submit their deposit by April 15th. So that wraps up all of my questions, but I'm going to invite Diane and Lindsay to join me again, and we can cover some of the questions that have been coming up in the Q&A.
Great, thanks so much, Alexis. Yeah, so Lindsay and I know we've been tackling some of your questions. Thanks so much. As I like to say, no question is a bad question, so please continue to submit them. We will make every attempt to to actually answer some of these questions live. So I just had taken a look at a couple of them that I thought that came up that might be worth talking to everybody about or responding to for everyone. So one is a question about, can I apply to multiple programs? Some of you have asked about whether you can apply to business analytics or MBA, and or whether you can also apply to a PhD program. Absolutely. They each, but keep in mind that each program has its own distinct applications, processes, reviews. So, but absolutely you can apply to multiple programs. So, and there's absolutely no negative inference as a result of that. Let's see.
Diane, I'm seeing a few questions from candidates who have several years of work experience or have more senior level positions. Can you talk about if this program is the right fit for someone with that background?
Sure. So, it is a pre-experience or early professional program. Again, 75, sometimes even higher percentage of the classes coming directly from a bachelor's or a university degree, where really their work experience has been more around summer internships, or perhaps they've done some research. And then the remaining percentage are coming, but typically it's not more than 3 years of full-time experience. So I think it's really a question of, are you, looking to, if you're working in the field of finance already, and maybe looking to do a bit of a pivot. So I'm making it up now. Let's say you've been in a trading function, and we've actually have had this exact case of students who've been, you've been trading, but you really want to pivot into more of a quant finance role. Maybe you want to go into a hedge fund or PE. So the way to do that would be to be able to take a Master in Finance program and gain those additional skills. But if you are working full-time and you have not had any exposure to the finance field, it's sort of a question of, if you're doing a career change, that is not the way the program is structured. It's not for a career changer. So I would say those are probably the best way, or that's the best way to describe it in terms of what we're really being able to teach you and the skills that you're going to have. And if you look at the students who graduate and where they're landing in terms of employment, and we do, by the way, have current employment reports are available on our website. I encourage you to take a look at them a little more closely. There's lots of detail around the types of, when you think of finance is lots of different functions. Again, on the buy side, the sell side, whether you're doing something more quantitative or maybe you're in more traditional iBanking. So it's really important to take a look at where our graduates land. I think that's helpful to understanding the types of roles, and they're mostly at the analyst, senior analyst, in some cases associate level. But again, that speaks to the fact that it is geared towards early stage or professionals. Okay.
Another few questions coming in about the academic background, math, coding. How are those viewed? And if someone doesn't have a college course, what should they do? Any recommendations?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So again, going back to everything you've heard thus far, is that we do take a very comprehensive approach. So let's just say that you maybe have been in you're in an econ discipline, you've had some econometrics, maybe you've had some statistics or even probability, but you may not have some of the other math courses, may have not done as much around programming. Depending on your background, any internships you may have had where you may have been able to learn on the job, some coding is really helpful. But we're going to be taking a very balanced approach. So one may offset the other. If you've done really well in more quantitative courses, and or you have that experience, whether in an internship or perhaps even full-time, these are the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at. And also keep in mind that, Alexis talked about the letters of recommendation. It really is important that you choose the recommenders who can answer those 7 questions that are listed in the application instructions, because that tells us a lot, both about your, academics, as well as if you've had, again, internships or other professional experience. So that speaks a lot to your abilities. The way to think about this is it's, what you've done thus far is usually a pretty strong indicator of how well you're going to be and how successful you'll be in the future. And, as I like to tell prospective students, this is about stretching you academically and intellectually, but we also don't want you to feel that you're overwhelmed to the point where you're not able to take advantage of everything else that MIT has to offer.
We have a test score question. Is the TOEFL required for this coming year for international students?
So again, while both the GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, IELTS, all those standardized tests are important components in the admissions review, they are not required, because we totally recognize that this has been a very challenging year for all of us. And there will be absolutely no negative inference. There are other ways that we'll be able to determine your English language proficiency if that's not your native language or first language. So, absolutely not. But again, if you have test scores and maybe they're a little bit expired and you feel that they're a strong representation of your abilities and you want to include it, please go right ahead and do that.
On that same note, I did see one question that someone asked, when is the last date I can take a test to submit? So please keep in mind that every component to your application needs to be submitted by that January 5th timeframe, because as soon as that deadline hits, it does go to our admissions committee for review. So if your test score comes in a few days later, there is a chance that your application was already reviewed. So make sure that everything is submitted, including those letters of recommendation. I also saw another question on giving your your recommenders a heads up on kind of what the process is. So what the process is that you're going to go into the application, you're going to put in who your recommender's name and their contact information. The system will send them an email to them directly. Then they will upload into a link that's in that email their letter of recommendation and answer some questions. So everything will go directly to them. So you can tell them to make sure to look out for an email from us. When you do go into that section on our application, there is also an email address. So if for whatever reason your recommender did not get the email, first have them check spam, but we can definitely regenerate it if it does not come through. So it's a pretty simple process, but something that you do want to start soon so that, again, they can get that submitted by January 5th.
Yeah, no, really good point. So I also see a question regarding, what can I do to prepare before enrolling in the MFin program, particularly if I'm interested in the more financial engineering aspect of the MFin program. So I would say it's a great question. Certainly if you want to enroll in online courses, if you're not in a position to continue to take additional courses because you're no longer in school, or don't feel the need to take a full course, anything that indicates that you are doing the extra work to prepare yourself is going to be helpful. So I would definitely say that, if you feel, again, look at the profile, the class profile, look at, the backgrounds they're coming from, look at some of the core, you can go into the course register, you won't see a complete syllabus for each course, but certainly you'll see descriptions of the courses, particularly the core requirements, and that should help you to understand, those foundations or fundamentals in mathematics are really going to be valuable. If you don't have them, then yeah, absolutely. If you can take an online course and have the ability to do that, or full course, yes, it would definitely be helpful to do so.
I'm seeing two great questions about the second video. So the one that is not the 1-minute introduction, but the second. Do applicants have the opportunity to re-record that several times? And any tips for how to approach that, how to prepare, how does it work?
They cannot record it more than once. It's just one time. So it's one and done. So be prepared. So I like to say, make sure that you're sitting at your computer, no distractions around, people aren't, walking around. Tell your family that, you're going to go sit down and do this thing for 1 minute. And again, it is absolutely no preparation. You will know the answer to the question. It is nothing that you need to study or look up ahead of time. So try not to be too stressed about it. It's really a very general interest question.
All right, another recommendation question. Is the admissions committee looking for someone with a big name or an impressive title, or someone who knows your work better?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So absolutely the latter, someone who knows your work better. Think of it this way, we are not reviewing your recommender, or we are actually reviewing what the recommender has to say about you. And again, it goes to those 7 questions that we ask them to respond to about, how you've contributed, that is really a big part of it. It is not so much what their level is, it's how well do they know you and the work that you've done.
I'm seeing a few questions about the 12-month versus 18-month program options. Are students able to change once they begin the program? And sort of how would you recommend someone choose one of those options? Yeah,
now another great question. So we have moved to an 18-month program with, as I said, in the application, if you are not sure, so let's put it this way, if you're not sure at the time that you apply, whether you want to be in the 12-month, don't check that box for 12-month. Okay, you will be admitted to the 18-month. There is a short, small window of opportunity for some students, but it requires looking at, speaking rather to the MFin program office and getting authorization from them and faculty after the summer term, but prior to the first fall term, if you decide at that point that you actually want to fast track in the 12-month. So again, it's important to think about, what do you want to get from the program? Again, if you do not check that box for 12-month, you are going to automatically be considered for the 18-month format. There is that small window, as I said, but you want to think about, particularly if you are someone who is coming with, directly from university, the benefits of the 18-month should be pretty obvious. Not only the summer internship, which is optional, but it is definitely something that our students take advantage of because it really does give you that opportunity for that practical experience. And hopefully if you have a great summer internship, you get a return offer, depending on which aspect or function of the finance industry you're interested in going into, that can be really helpful. So, again, I think you need to think very seriously about what's going to make the most sense for you. And on the flip side of that, if you are someone who is looking to pursue a PhD, for example, the 18-month has some real benefits because you can have more time to do a thesis, to work on your PhD application, perhaps do some research with faculty. So again, we created the program in such a way that we feel that this 18-month format really does benefit the majority of the students who enroll.
Should we include extracurricular activities such as startups or sort of student government or charity organizations that you're a part of, and where should you do that in the application?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexis. Were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was mentioning on the resume, there's a section, I think it's education, work experience, and then additional. Under that additional, please absolutely tell us what you're involved with in your undergraduate or outside of work. We are very interested to learn more about, those extracurricular activities.
All right, I see a question here. So circling back to test scores, would submitting a score give you any kind of advantage this year, even though it's not a required piece for this cycle?
So again, it's exactly as we said. It's not required. That being said, it certainly is an important component of our admissions review. So if you have it, sure, absolutely, you can submit it. If not, again, there's no negative inference because we are not laser focused on one particular metric. That's the best way to describe it. So we are not just looking at GPA only or GMAT or GRE score only. We are looking at everything. We're looking at the types of courses you've taken, how well you've done in those courses, what your academic recommenders say about you. So again, it's really, think about this as putting together the strongest application possible that best represents your abilities.
And how much should applicants sort of have a solid long-term plan? How much do they need to know what they want to do post MFin? And
yeah, no. I mean, it's a great question. So we are definitely going to probe during, for the students who are going to advance to in the admissions process to an interview. That is one of the things that we're going to be probing in a little bit more detail. We want to understand not so much, we don't need to hear that you're going to tell me that I know I only want to work for Goldman Sachs on the strats desk and that's what I want to do. We want to get a better understanding of if you've had some exposure to finance, whether it's internships or full-time, what do you know about a particular function or area that you think you want to focus on? So it's more about connecting those dots and helping us to know that you've done the research, that you understand what it takes to be in a particular function within the finance field.
All right, another video question. Another video question. What is the admissions team evaluating when it comes to the videos?
I mean, we're evaluating your English language abilities. So that's, again, one area that we are able to use that for the video for. And then also kind of what's important to you. So as I was mentioning, for video 1, at least, the prompt is introducing yourself to your classmates. The rest of the application, you're really answering direct questions that the admissions committee is asking you. For instance, the 3 short answer questions, and then what you're putting on your resume. Your letters of recommendation are addressing specific questions with regards to your abilities, your technical abilities. We want to know a little bit more about who you are and how you would introduce yourself and pretend like you're walking into a classroom. What are you going to say? That's what we want to know in that first video.
Awesome. And I see 2 questions that are related about the interview process. So one is, can someone be admitted without an interview? And the second is there a written test component of the interview or sort of anything else they should expect?
Yeah, those are great questions. So the interview is a required component of the application process. So if you are admitted, you have been interviewed. If you are not invited to interview, that means that we are no longer considering you for admission to the MFin program. With regards to the actual interview itself, there will be a virtual component, just like a webinar, where you'll see me, you'll see Diane, and we'll be asking you a series of questions. And then there will be a quantitative assessment component to that. And more information about that will be sent out again in the invitation.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
I also see a question about, so someone is asking a couple of questions actually that come to mind. What kind of financial aid opportunities and or other sources are available? So let me speak a little bit to that. So first and foremost, we do not provide needs-based financing. That said, however, all admitted students are automatically eligible and considered for a merit-based fellowship. These fellowships are somewhat limited. They certainly help to offset the cost of tuition, but they're not intended to cover the full cost. What many of our students do is take advantage, it's sort of, they put together, if you will, a bundle or package of different financing sources. So maybe personal, they may also seek out scholarships. So we list, some of scholarships are listed actually on the MIT website. So you can take a look at those. You would apply to those separately. And then we do have a student funding group that works with our admitted students to help them navigate, what are my other options? Are there loans available, particularly if you're an international student, what loans are accessible or available to you? So again, it's sort of a bundle or a package that students put together.
Great. This is a similar question to one that was answered, but where should applicants put additional coursework, certifications, MIT open courseware classes that they've taken? Where should they put that in the application?
When they open the application, there's actually an entire section called additional coursework. I believe it's called additional coursework. So they'll see it very clearly. And it says this is where you should upload those certificates and non-degree transcripts.
Great. When are interview invitations being sent out?
So
let's say, yeah, go ahead, Diane.
No, I was going to say, typically, and this actually brings up an interesting point that I neglected to mention. We do not have rolling basis decision making. So in other words, nothing is happening between now and the January 5th deadline. After the January 5th deadline is when we start reviewing applications. So there is that review that happens by the admissions committee members. And then sometime by, we hope, so the end of January is the timeframe that we typically would send out invitations. The interviews will happen in the month of February, as we mentioned, but give or take, but we try to give interviewees a week or 2 weeks, if possible, notice about an interview. I don't know, Alexa, if you had anything else.
Given the virtual nature of them, it probably won't be 2 weeks. You probably will have about a week, if maybe a little bit less. We are able to do them in a quicker turnaround time now because they are virtual. So that allows for us to schedule things at an easier time for both parties, both the admission staff as well as you at home. For the interview. One of the other questions I saw is that if your application is not successful this year, will we get feedback? And unfortunately, no, we do not have the capacity to give one-on-one feedback. So if you are a reapplicant, who's applying from last year, I would say think about your application materials. I know we didn't talk about reapplicants too much, so I want to touch on that quickly. If you're a reapplicant, thinking about what you submitted last year, because we will look at last year's application as well as this year's application. So you will want to provide us with some updates, what you have been doing, what has changed since you last applied. We are unable to provide you with why you weren't offered admission or offered an interview last year, and that will go for the same if you're just applying for the first time this year and you're not offered an interview or later down the line not offered admission. We cannot give you that feedback, but we definitely recommend making sure that you're reviewing all of your materials, thinking about who's submitting those letters of recommendation for you, attending our webinars and app tips series that we hold from time to time. I think it helps give some insight into what we're looking for specifically.
I also see a question about, is there a possibility for students to propose and create an interdisciplinary hybrid program? So the MFin program is the MFin program as it's structured. That being said, we do have, again, because of the flexibility, students do take advantage of coursework, not only at Sloan, but across MIT. And we have a business analytics certificate that is available to students if that is something you're interested in. And some of our students do take advantage of it as well.
Here's a question. How does the admissions committee view work experience or internship experience that was not in finance? If you did a consulting internship, does that put you at any kind of disadvantage?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we have students who come from many different backgrounds, and what we're looking for, a couple of things is, if you've not had any exposure to the finance field, perhaps you have coursework, maybe you've done other things that are finance related. What is your understanding again of the different functions or career options in finance? Help us to understand and connect those dots as to why you would want to pursue a career in finance, because this is a deep dive. We're going to prepare you, obviously, to have all the technical skills that are required, particularly in a very highly complex financial marketplace. But help us to understand what you've done thus far that would explain why you see finances as a good link or the next step for you in launching your career.
All right, another letter of recommendation question specifically about the quantitative letter. Can that be written by someone who's not a professor or a supervisor, but someone like a tutor or an old high school teacher?
So I don't know if I would not necessarily suggest from high school, because that is going pretty far back. But if you have a tutor who's an academic tutor, if that's what I think is being asked, and there's really no one else who can speak to it, then that could potentially be fine. But you might also want to mention that somewhere in the application as well, or have the recommender mention the relationship.
One more logistical question. If your college major is not showing up on our drop-down list of choices in the application, how should the applicant add it?
I believe there's an option for other, and then I think it opens up a like a form to type in. If you have specific issues though, please email us, because I know that there's a way to do it, and we can definitely get our ops team to help you out with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know we're wrapping up on time, but I'm seeing a couple questions on employment gaps due to COVID and other COVID related issues. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are completely understanding that COVID has changed a lot for a lot of people. And so, if you have an employment gap or you're taking a gap year, we absolutely understand that. We just want to know what you're doing during that time. So make sure that you're telling us, what you're doing to fill your time as you're applying for graduate programs. But please know that there's absolutely, again, no negative inference there.
Yeah, I totally concur on that one. All right. How are we doing?
Other questions? Yeah. Let's see.
I saw a question that was pre-submitted from one of the registrants. Any red flags, any big things to avoid when applying? Common mistakes.
Well, so not to be sounding flippant about it, but not answering the questions that we ask in the application is a big, red flag. So yeah, answer the questions, take your time, be thoughtful, careful about how you respond or how you, read what we're asking of you. As I said, nothing's going to happen until after January 5th. So really, take the time that you need to put it together and make sure you have answered all of the questions that we ask.
I echo everything Diane said, and also want to stress reading the instructions. Please, please, please. We have worked on the instructions so hard to ask specifically what we need from you. So to the extent that you can follow those instructions, we truly appreciate it. It makes reviewing and the evaluation process all that much better for us.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think in closing, let me just first and foremost say we really appreciate you joining us. Definitely do not hesitate to, and I think I'll put it up again, but I know you should have our contact information. So please, we make every effort to respond within 24 to 48 hours. So I promise it doesn't go into a deep hole somewhere. But this is an opportunity to tell your story in the application, and think of it that way. Don't think of it in terms of, we have lots of information on our website. Again, I encourage you to take a look at the website. Lots of clues about the kinds of things that we're looking for in terms of our students and engaging in the community. So, really spend the time and put some thought into the application. And we hope this has been helpful. Stay safe, and best of luck to all of you. And we look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.